Chapter 14. Wind and rain are heaven's sickness. One day, I curiously asked Tu-hung, "Do you remember how many times you've delivered letters for Uncle Dan?" Tu-hung pinched his lips and hesitated. "A dozen or so times. That many? Huh, yeah." I squinted. "Have you ever secretly opened one to see what Uncle Dan wrote inside?" Once Tu-hung replied shyly, his face blushing, as if suddenly brushed with the color of the evening sky. I moved closer to him. "What did Uncle Dan write?" "I think it was a poem." "A poem? Yes. What kind of poem?" "I don't know." "Do you remember any lines from it?" "I remember 2 lines." "Read them to me." Tu-hung recited. "Wind and rain are heavens, sickness longing for you is the sickness of my heart." At the time, I didn't know that was a poem by Nugent Bianich. I just thought the 2 lines were kind of lovely and amusing. I kept repeating them to myself so I wouldn't forget. For days, I didn't know what to do with those 2 lines until I suddenly remembered Shin, the girl who sat next to me in class. Shin was a cute girl, even though her cheeks were covered in freckles. Sun, the son of Mr. Bawan, and I shared the same desk. I sat in the middle, she sat on my right, and Sun sat on the left. Every day, Sun and I would tease her. In the middle of class, I would suddenly turn to her. "Want something to eat, Shin?" "Eat what?" "Eat begging. What else?" A moment later, it would be Sun's turn. "Oh, I'm so hungry." "Want to eat, Shin?" "Eat what?" "Eat begging." Every time we teased her with eat begging, a pun on her name, Shin, which also means to beg, she would sniffle and cry. She would pout, turn her face away, and refuse to talk to us. But she was quick to forget. The next day, she would fall into our trap all over again. When I asked, "Want something to eat, Shin?" she would innocently respond, "Eat what?" and then end up teary-eyed for the rest of the class. It happened 1,000 times like that. Which means I saw her cry 1,000 times. On the 1,001st time, I suddenly realized I liked making Shin cry because I was completely smitten with the way she pouted and sulked. Some girls may seem plain at first glance, but for some reason, when they get upset, they become unbelievably adorable. Chapter 15. The Greedy One. I decided to send those 2 nice and quirky lines of poetry to Shin. I didn't understand why I did it, but I knew I couldn't stop myself. Maybe I wanted to imitate Chudan. In my naive soul, if I were Chudan, then surely Chivin had to be Shin. I tore a sheet from my notebook, carefully wrote the 2 lines on the white paper, then folded it into quarters, and put it in an envelope. But I didn't hand the letter to Shin, even though it was really easy. I wanted everything to be exactly like Cha Chudan. At recess, I pulled Sun out to the backyard, took the letter from my pocket, and gave it to him. "When you go to class later, give this letter to Shin for me." "What letter? Can't you give it yourself?" "No," I said, with a worldly tone. "Letters like this, you have to rely on a bluebird." "Bluebird?" Sun blinked in confusion. "What's a bluebird?" I scratched my head. "Bluebird means a special mail carrier." I patted Sun's shoulder, hoping to silence any further tricky questions. "You're my bluebird." Afraid he might refuse, I cleared my throat and flattered him. Being a bluebird is prestigious. Not everyone can be a bluebird. You have to be very capable. Nonsense. Sun spat between his teeth, but he didn't refuse. He narrowed his eyes at me, sounding greedy. "So what do I get for being a bluebird?" "Get what?" I stammered, completely unprepared for such a question. "Yeah," Sun said bluntly, "if I deliver your letter, I expect some payment." I fumbled in my pocket, feeling annoyed that the ghost who hanged himself in Sun's house hadn't taken his soul away yet. I rummaged around and pulled out a handful of colorful marbles. Country kids didn't have many toys like city kids. Even when we grew up big, we still played marbles, spinning tops, and other childish games. "Look," I held out the marbles in front of him. "You can pick whichever marble you want." Sun's eyes widened, carefully poking each marble, then licking his lips. "I like them all." "What do you mean?" I asked wide-eyed. "I'll take them all." Sun grinned. "I'll beat you up, Sun." I puffed up, face red. I finally won this many marbles, after a whole week. "If you take them all, what do I have to play with? If you don't agree, forget it," Sun said as he turned and walked away. "Go deliver the letter yourself." I anxiously watched the bluebird walk away, my heart suddenly tangled. Something like this, without a bluebird, would be a disaster. Worst of all, I wouldn't be able to imitate Chu Dan. Finally, I shouted I agree. Regretfully, I dumped all the marbles in my hand into Sun's palm, saying with disgust, "Greedy." Chapter 16. Fooling Around. After recess, SN had another letter in his shirt pocket and a handful of marbles. In his pants pocket he was a few grams heavier, but he walked very fast. To be precise, he walked fast because I deliberately walked slowly. There were 3 of us at the desk. Shin sat next to the wall, then me, and finally, SN. If I entered our seats in the usual order, I would block Sin's way. That's why I hung back, my eyes glued to the blue bird every second. I thought SN would be terribly awkward, but he carried out the mission in a flash. He pulled the letter from his shirt pocket, flicked it right in front of Shin, jerked his chin, and said shortly, "Here, for you, Shin." "What letter is this?" Shin timidly looked at the envelope. "The you sent it to you." Then SN hurriedly backed away to let me in. Compared to the effort Ti Chiang went through to deliver letters for Uncle N, Sen's help in my story was like a grain of sand. His attitude was careless and sloppy. For something as momentous as a boy giving a girl a letter for the first time, his actions were indifferent, and his tone sounded like vinegar poured in someone's ear. But I didn't have time to mourn a few lost marbles. I slipped into my seat, not daring to look at Shin, but from the corner of my eye, I anxiously watched her, and nearly held my breath when she slowly opened the envelope and began to read the letter. Of course, I had no idea what Shin would do after reading the 2 lines of poetry I had written for her. I was too young to imagine how a love story might unfold if my letter could even begin one. I was just copying Uncle N. And only halfway. I copied his love essay, but only the introduction. The body and conclusion were covered by his hand, so I couldn't guess the next developments. I idly wondered, maybe Shin would write something on a piece of paper and send it back to me. I kept thinking and thinking, pinching my lip again and again. I guessed Shin might do this or that. I even imagined the worst possible outcome. She would crumple the letter into a ball and throw it in my face. I fidgeted on the bench, my imagination running wild. Except for one thing I never imagined. Shin didn't scold me, didn't throw the letter back in my face. She held the letter, stepped out of her seat, and walked straight to the teacher's desk. Unluckily, at that moment, we were in literature class, with the short-tempered teacher, Mr. Nan. The consequence was immediate. Mr. Nan called me to the board and, in front of all the curious eyes of my classmates, he pinched my ear, painfully almost lifting me off the ground. I nearly lost my ear, as his teeth ground tightly together. "Love, nonsense. You can't even write a proper dictation, and you're already fooling around." Chapter 17. Darling, if the dream doesn't come true, then what? After that incident, I was mad at Shin for a whole month. In class, I wouldn't look at her, let alone talk to her. If she accidentally brushed my elbow while copying notes, I would coldly and harshly jerk my arm away. I also stopped going to her house, even though her yard used for drying rice was almost as big as the tiled courtyard at Sister Vin's house. It was one of 2 main playgrounds for the village kids. On bright moonlit nights, if we didn't gather at Sister Vin's place, my friends and I would meet in Shin's yard to play tag, blindfold goat catching, flag stealing, and other games late into the night. We'd only scatter and sneak home along the hedges when our parents came looking with sticks in hand. Shin knew I was mad at her, and she was clearly upset about it. Every now and then, when I glanced to my right, I smugly saw that her face looked like she was about to cry. The freckles on her cheeks seemed to tremble. Sometimes, seeing her so downcast, I couldn't help but feel a little pang of emotion, but I firmly refused to make up. When I returned to my seat with a tear-streaked face after being punished by Mr. Nan, Shin had turned toward me in concern, her voice full of regret. "I'm sorry. I didn't know the teacher would punish you." "Sorry, my foot," I snapped. "What were you thinking, handing my letter to the teacher like that?" "I wasn't thinking anything," she stammered. "I thought you were teasing me, so I told on you. Are you blind?" I got even angrier. "When did I ever tease you?" Shin turned pale, probably seeing how my jaw clenched as if ready to bite her. She lowered her eyes and mumbled, "Then, why did you send me that letter?" At that point, I was completely stumped. I didn't know how to explain it to her. I was sure Sister Vin never asked Uncle N such a dumb question. You're such a kid. I finally huffed and declared sulkily. I'm not playing with you anymore. Truthfully, I wasn't angry at Shin for that long. I knew she hadn't meant to get me in trouble. But the teasing from our classmates made it impossible for me to reconcile with her. Wherever I went, those vicious mouths would sing. The old lady shows off for the old man. Every afternoon they walk by the riverbank. Even SN wouldn't let the wound in my heart heal. He kept singing, "Darling, if the dream doesn't come true, then what? Buy a bottle of rat poison, and just end it all." And that went on for a long time. Chapter 18, Mr. Nan. I only stopped being mad at Shin the day Mr. Nan stormed around with a rattan cane, hunting down Uncle N. And Sister Vin. He was pacing around outside our veranda, his voice booming. "Where's that out? Come out here now." It was nighttime. Chi-Chiang and I were squatting on the floor. We were both peering under the bed, calling out to little Cu to come eat the leftover rice. When Mr. Nan's voice suddenly struck our ears like machine gun fire. After dinner, our mom had gone to Grandma's house to prepare for my grandfather's death anniversary. So only the two of us were home. Our stomachs clenched. We looked at each other in fear. "Do you know where Uncle is?" I whispered. Chi-Chiang was just as nervous. His voice came out flat, like from a broken loudspeaker. "Right now, Uncle An and Sister Vin are probably sitting by the canal." The canal he meant was right behind Mr. Nan's house, next to the rice fields. Sometimes, he and I went there to fish, or to place bamboo traps between the field ridges. I said, my guts churning. "Sitting out there, if Mr. Nan catches them, they're dead. Don't worry." Chi-Chiang tried to reassure me, though his voice trembled. With all this yelling, Uncle and Sister Vin must have run off by now. "Where's that An hiding?" Mr. Nan's voice boomed again from the yard. "If I catch you, you're done for." I shrank back, feeling like a terrified soldier surrounded by enemies. Worse yet, my gun was out of bullets, my dagger was lost, and the enemy was shouting, trumpets blaring just about to attack. And they really did. After yelling with no response, Mr. Nan stormed into the house like a typhoon. His voice thundered so loudly, it felt like the roof was about to collapse. "Where did you run off to with Vin?" And he stood in the middle of the room, his furious eyes sweeping from side to side. I could see his cheek twitching, and if smoke had suddenly started pouring out of him, I wouldn't have been surprised. Catching sight of me, and Chi-Chiang crouched on the floor, he barked. "What are you two doing here? Did either of you see An?" I swallowed hard, trying to appear obedient. "No, sir, I don't know." "Humph, don't know." He growled. Then, noticing Chi-Chiang, he suddenly remembered his supposed complicity, and furiously lashed out with the cane. "Take this, blue bird." Mr. Nan struck so fast and hard that Chi-Chiang didn't even have time to dodge. I heard a loud whack, and saw him jolt. He didn't make a sound, but his posture showed how painful it was. Still stunned, I suddenly saw Mr. Nan's eyes shift toward me. In the lamplight, I caught a glimpse of the red veins in his eyes. Just in time, I bolted for the door before the cane came down, along with a furious scolding. "And this one too. The storm is heaven's sickness, huh?" After that incident, I finally realized that Mr. Nan had twisted my ears so harshly the other day not because he hated me, but because he was furious with Uncle N. He must have read the 2 verses by Nugent B&H in the letter Uncle An had written to Sister Vin. Shin's actions had just accidentally triggered the explosion of anger already building inside him. Chapter 19. Teacher Nan beats Uncle An. I remember when I was 8 years old, a fortune teller came by our house, asking for a drink of water. His clothes were faded, his figure thin and worn, with a sparse, short beard, and a face so pale and gray, you'd think he had eaten nothing but salted radish his whole life. He sat cross-legged on the chair, sipping from a plastic cup of water, all the while quietly observing my brother and me. That cup of water was the kind I would finish in just a few gulps, but he sat there drinking it slowly, for what felt like forever. While drinking, he didn't say a word, but before leaving, he pointed at me, nodded, and told my mother, "This boy, be careful, or one day he might drown." When I heard his words, I felt nothing, but my mother's face turned pale like a banana leaf. Her brow only eased a little when he added, "If he survives past the age of 18, doesn't drown in a river or stream, he'll live a long life." Then he turned to look at Chi-Chiang, tilting his head slightly. This one's too handsome. Fate is jealous of beauty. He'll have a hard life, but he'll be protected by kind souls. Don't worry, he'll face many troubles, but in the end, he'll overcome them all. I don't know how accurate that fortune teller really was, but when it comes to Tiqiang being accident-prone, thinking back now, I must admit, the old man was right. Tiqiang was always getting into trouble, from being hit with a stick by my dad, to getting a rock thrown at his head by me, and now being whipped on the back by Teacher Nan. In a burst of anger, it was always one disaster after another. I was naughtier than him, more mischievous, and always the one who started the trouble. But thanks to being quick on my feet, I usually escaped the beatings. That day, I hid out on the veranda for a long while, waiting until Teacher Nan had left, before sneaking back inside. Tiqiang was still sitting on the floor. He and the little toad Cu were sitting face to face. The toad was busy snapping at insects. Tiqiang was busy crying. Seeing him sob like that, I couldn't bear it. I sat down beside him, gently put my arm around his shoulder, and comforted him. Don't cry, little brother. I had always called Tiqiang Mei, the rough way to say you. Hearing me call him M so sweetly caught him off guard, and he started crying even harder. I gently touched his back, as carefully as if I were touching something fragile. Does it hurt a lot, little brother? It hurts less now, Anhahai Tiqiang sniffled. Then why are you still crying? Why did Teacher Nan hit me for no reason? Tiqiang looked up at me with his tear-streaked face, wiping his eyes with both hands, and said with frustration. When he caught me giving a letter to Sister Vin, why didn't he hit me then? Why now? I sighed deeply. It's not you Teacher Nan wanted to hit. He was hitting Uncle An. Chapter 20. The cicada season hasn't come yet. Teacher Nan beat Uncle Dan, but Uncle Dan didn't seem hurt at all. Meanwhile, Tung's back was badly bruised. The next morning, I lifted his shirt to check, and although the bruise had faded, there was still a faint green eel mark running across his back. Tuong. My voice softened. What is it, brother? Summer is coming, yes. When summer comes and the cicadas return, I'll take you to sneak around catching cicadas. Wow, that's awesome. We'll catch them with jackfruit sap, right? Yeah, with jackfruit sap. I'll carve 2 long sticks, one for you, one for me. Then we'll smear sap on the tips. I know. Just like last year, right? Last year, every afternoon, the 2 of us would sneak along the fences, stalking cicadas under the blazing sun. The summer sun poured down in waves, turning golden the cotton tree leaves at Mr. Bawan's house, the longan leaves at Teacher Nan's, the star apple leaves in Grandma's garden, and our hair too. Every afternoon after catching cicadas, our faces were flushed red, and our hair was wild and sunburned like two. My mother would scold us, threatening to tell Dad, and Tuong and I would turn pale with fear. But the very next day, we would skip our afternoon naps again, sneak out the back door with our sticks, and wander along the fences, listening for the cicadas' chorus in the treetops. But this summer won't be exactly like last year's. Last year and the years before it, was always Tuong who carved the sticks. Brother, go study. I'll do it, Tuong would always say, swinging the machete in his hand. At those times, I happily let him handle it, even though the term exams were over, and I didn't have any studying left to do. I just wanted to play. But this summer, I'll be the one carving the sticks. I want to make it up to him. The fortune teller already said, Tuong has a hard life, full of misfortunes. I want to carry some of his burden. And among the many burdens, the least difficult is carving sticks to catch cicadas. But the flamboyant tree in front of Sister Vin's house hasn't bloomed yet. Summer is still a long way off. I clicked my tongue and looked at Tuong. I'll go find chickenweed for you now. For playing chicken fighting, right? Yup. I know where to find some, Tuong shouted. I'll show you. Saying that, Tuong grabbed my hand and pulled me out of the house, heading toward the stone well behind the garden. I followed him, feeling a quiet sadness inside. It was always like that every time I felt touched and tried to help Tuong with something. In the end, the one being helped always turned out to be me. Again and again, it was always that way. Chapter 21. The Dragonfly That Bites the Belly Button. The patch of earth around the stone well was always damp, so weeds thrived there year-round. Ginger grass and Spanish needle grew together with amaranth and purslane, occasionally joined by a crimson coxcomb flower. The grass grew thick and even spread onto the stone steps of the well. Farther away was a patch of water spinach, its lush green leaves thick and vibrant. Couch grass grew right at the edge where the grass met the vegetables. I didn't know when Tichiang discovered that spot. I usually picked couch grass by the fence. While I was busy selecting the strongest, toughest blades of couch grass, quickly gathering a whole handful, Tichiang didn't seem to have picked a single one. I saw him crouching in one spot, examining something in his hand. "What are you doing? Why aren't you picking couch grass, Tichiang?" "Look at this." Tichiang turned toward me, extending his hand while still squatting. I looked at his beaming face and licked my lips before asking, "Is it a fire cricket?" "Nope." I moved closer and bent down to see a millipede curled up in his palm. "Gross." I grimaced. "You're playing with bugs." "It's a millipede, brother. It's totally harmless." I spat dramatically on the ground. "Still a bug. You're disgusting. I'm not playing with you anymore." With that, I took my bunch of grass and headed back inside, leaving Tichiang behind, poking at the millipede with his finger. Clearly delighted to see it curl up in fear. Rural kids are friends with animals. Buffaloes, cows, dogs, cats, birds, and insects. I was no different. I had matchboxes and cardboard boxes to keep crickets, long-horned beetles, cicadas, and other bugs. But I wasn't like Tichiang happily played with ants, dragonflies, grasshoppers, spiders, millipedes, and even caterpillars. He was currently keeping a toad under the bed. The way Tichiang made friends with every creature sometimes made me think he was a bit weird. Just with a stick in hand, he could spend hours playing with a fuzzy caterpillar wriggling on a rotten log. He would defend them whenever I made a face at his bug friends. "You don't know anything. Spiders spin webs, so we can stop bleeding when we cut ourselves. And dragonflies bite our belly button, to help us learn how to swim." Tichiang was right about the spider web. Whenever I cut my hand and started bleeding, I would suck on my finger, and run like crazy to the storage room or kitchen, to find a spider web. Wrapped around the cut, the bleeding would stop right away for reasons I never understood. For a long time, that was our magic medicine for a childhood full of scrapes. But I didn't believe the dragonfly story one bit. I squinted at Tichiang. "You're silly. Dragonflies bite your belly button, and suddenly you know how to swim." "Yeah, who told you that? Uncle Jan, huh?" I lowered my voice, hesitating. "Are you serious?" "I'll go ask him myself." "I'm serious," Tichiang said, then dashed off toward the back garden. Moments later, he came back holding a red dragonfly in his hand. "Lift your shirt." Tichiang looked eagerly at my stomach, urging me on. "No way." I stepped back. "You let it bite your belly button first." Tichiang pulled up his shirt and placed the dragonfly right in the center of his navel. I rested my hands on my knees and tilted my head to watch. The dragonfly suddenly lifted its thin wings, curled its tail, and before I could get a good look, Tichiang let out a yelp and hastily pulled it away. "What happened?" I jumped. "Did it hurt?" Tichiang gave a sheepish smile. "Just a little. Like an ant bite. Just a little. You screamed loud enough to bring the house down." I eyed him suspiciously. I even thought he was on the verge of tears from the pain. So when Tichiang offered me the dragonfly and said, "Your turn," I waved it away. "I'm not playing this stupid game, stupid." "What else would you call it?" I shrugged. "I'll believe it when I see you swim." That afternoon, the two of us went to the stream. I stood on the bank and watched while Tichiang waded into the shallow part, looking for a spot where the water reached his chest to practice swimming. The results of the session were summed up in our gloomy little conversation afterward. "Did you swim?" "Yeah." "Did you sink?" "Yeah." Chapter 22. One-Handed Canoe. I chuckled the whole way home from the stream. "See, I told you it was a stupid game." Tichiang tried to defend himself. "Maybe the red dragonfly wasn't magical. Next time I'll catch a yellow one." Hearing that gave me chills. Yellow dragonflies are 2 or 3 times bigger than red ones, and way more aggressive. Letting a yellow dragonfly bite your belly button could leave a hole in your stomach. "Don't do anything foolish," I snapped at Tichiang, "but Uncle Ah-Un said so." Well, Uncle Ah-Un did say that. But the next day, he said something different. When Tichiang and I ran into him, and told him about Tichiang trying to learn to swim, Uncle Len patted the little guy's head and said sheepishly, "You silly boy. I was only joking. I used to let dragonflies bite my belly button when I was a kid, but I didn't learn to swim from that." Turns out Uncle Ot-an was just as gullible as Ti-Chi-Yang when he was our age. "So do you know how to swim now, Uncle?" Ti-Chi-Yang blinked and asked innocently. Uncle answered by dragging both of us down to the stream. In front of our amazed eyes, he took off his shirt and dove into the water, vanishing beneath the blue surface in an instant. He swam underwater all the way to the other side, and popped up among the bright red flowers of the wild banana trees, grinning. "How was that?" Ti-Chi-Yang clapped excitedly. "That was awesome. Teach us how to swim." Uncle Lon swam back, and I was seriously impressed. He swam fast as an otter, even though he only used one arm to paddle. That day, Ti-Chi-Yang and I took turns riding on his slippery bare back, both thrilled and slightly terrified. Uncle An became our personal canoe, carrying the two of us back and forth across the stream at least 10 times. He didn't teach us to swim that day, but even that was enough to make us ridiculously happy. He said, "Today, you just get to ride the canoe. Next time, I'll teach you how to swim." Before we left the stream, he picked some pandan leaves from the bank, twisted them into a little flute, and gave it to Ti-Chi-Yang, who played it all the way home. It was Uncle S' way of making it up to the poor kid for making him suffer a dragonfly bite to the belly button, just because of some silly advice. Chapter 23. The Sad Harmonica. When Uncle An gave Ti-Chi-Yang the pandan leaf whistle, the incident with Mr. Nan storming around with a cane looking for him and Sister Vin hadn't happened yet. Later, when Uncle Ot-an found out that Ti-Chi-Yang had taken a painful whipping for no reason that day, his face fell into deep sadness. He stroked Tung's head and said, "Poor boy." His voice was soft and sorrowful, like a sigh. He was speaking to Ti-Chi-Yang but not looking at him. His eyes were filled with melancholy, drifting somewhere beyond the distant bamboo grove. His face, usually so cheerful, suddenly looked worn and weathered. The features that were once full of life had stiffened, as if carved from wood. I sat beside him, not daring to look up or say a word. Ti-Chi-Yang was the same. He mimicked Uncle An, gazing dreamily into the distance. A heavy aching stillness surrounded the three of us, weighing down on my chest like a stone. Then suddenly, the sound of a harmonica rose into the air. "How nice," Ti-Chi-Yang whispered. "Uncle, play for us." I chimed in, excited. "It's been so long since you played your harmonica." But after listening for a while, my excitement faded. Uncle S' harmonica sounded hauntingly sad, today nothing like before. The notes were mournful, as if lamenting someone. He must have been thinking about his ill-fated love for Sister Vin. They loved each other. But Mr. Nan didn't want her to marry a man with only one arm. I suddenly blurted out, "Please don't play anymore, Uncle." Ti-Chi-Yang added, "It sounds so sad, Uncle." Chayan net, say ken vau tio, why, cha kang thu nia ji, cha ke chayan, macho kuk kan eng, lsc ko la boogie chu. Chayan ma eng ban kia mgi thich. Niang tva Ti-Chi-Yang vien hao hang, grioi. Cha ke chayan thung, sn thick, dy thi chic, oma tring bin thon mao han sai, cha. So Uncle Len rolled up his sleeve over his missing arm. Familiar gesture, then cleared his throat 2 or 3 times to prepare. "You two already know, right? Mr. Bahun's house was a 2-story house.